What if the biggest lie about money isn't that the rich cheat, but that they don't have to? What if the tax system you've been taught to trust was never designed to tax wealth at all? Only people who work for it? What if I told you there's a completely legal way for certain people to live like royalty? Spend millions, own mansions, fly private, and still pay little to no taxes for most of their lives, and when they die, their children get to keep almost everything? No offshore accounts. No illegal loopholes. No shady tricks hidden in some tax haven you've never heard of. This isn't tax evasion. This isn't a conspiracy theory. And it's not something that only started recently. This system has been sitting right in front of us for decades, quietly shaping who gets rich, who stays rich, and who keeps paying the bill. Most of us grow up believing a simple story. Everyone plays by the same financial rules. If you work hard, earn more, and save responsibly, you'll eventually get ahead. And if the rich seem to pay less in taxes, it must be because they're bending the rules or gaming the system. That story feels fair. It's also wrong. The truth is far more unsettling. The wealthiest people aren't winning because they cheat. They're winning because they're playing a completely different game, one built directly into the tax code itself. There's a name for this system. It's called buy, borrow, die. It sounds almost too simple, almost childish, but once you understand how it works, you'll realize it explains more about wealth inequality than most political debates ever will. Hey everyone, welcome to Quietly Broke. This isn't a video about how to get rich overnight. Most people watching will never be able to use this strategy, but understanding it will permanently change how you see money, taxes, and why so many hardworking people feel like they're running on a treadmill that never stops. If content like this helps you see the financial system more clearly, take a second to subscribe to Quietly Broke. It's the best way to support the channel and help me keep making videos that actually explain how the game is played. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Think about it carefully, then drop your answer in the comments. Question: what do you think the US tax system really taxes more heavily? A. Hard work and income. B. Ownership and wealth. Comment A or B below, and let's keep going. If the first part of this story felt uncomfortable, that's because it quietly challenges something most of us have believed our entire lives, that the system is fair. And if it isn't, it's because a few bad actors are breaking the rules. To understand why that belief doesn't hold up, we have to step back and look at where this system actually comes from. The phrase buy, borrow, die wasn't invented by a billionaire or a private bank trying to sell a clever financial product. It came from a law professor, Edward McCaffrey, in the 1990s. He wasn't trying to help the rich get richer. He was trying to explain to his students why the tax system produced outcomes that felt deeply unfair, even when everyone was technically following the law. For years, this idea lived mostly in academic circles. It sounded too clean, too simple, almost like an oversimplification of a complex tax code. Most people assumed the reality had to be more nuanced. Surely billionaires were paying something. Surely the system would catch up to them eventually. Then, in 2021, that assumption collapsed. ProPublica published an investigation based on leaked IRS data that showed what many suspected but few could prove. Some of the wealthiest individuals in the country were paying astonishingly low effective tax rates. Not because they were hiding money, but because they weren't generating taxable income at all. This is the part most conversations about taxes completely miss. The tax code is not designed to tax wealth as it grows. It is designed to tax income when it appears and gains when they are realized. If money shows up on a paycheck, it's taxed immediately. If an asset is sold for a profit, that profit is taxed. But if wealth quietly increases on paper, year after year, without being sold, there is no taxable event, no bill, no deadline, no consequence. Once you see this distinction clearly, a lot of confusing headlines suddenly make sense. Debates about tax rates start to feel oddly disconnected from reality. The anger people feel stops being abstract and becomes personal. Because the system isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it was built to do, and it rewards a very specific way of holding and growing money. Once you understand that the tax system mainly reacts to income and realized gains, The behavior of the wealthy stops looking mysterious and starts looking almost inevitable. The first move they make is surprisingly quiet. They don't chase higher salaries or bigger paychecks. In fact, many of them actively avoid income. Instead, they structure their wealth around ownership, assets designed to grow in value without constantly throwing off taxable cash. These are not the kinds of investments most people are taught to focus on. They aren't built around monthly income or short-term payouts. They're built around appreciation, growth stocks that reinvest profits instead of paying dividends. Real estate chosen for long-term value increases rather than rental yield. Stakes in private companies that might not produce cash for years, sometimes decades. The advantage of this approach is simple but profound. As long as these assets are not sold, their rising value remains invisible to the tax system. A portfolio can quietly double, triple, or quadruple on paper without triggering a single dollar in taxes. Wealth accumulates, but it does so silently. For someone earning a living through wages, this feels almost unreal. Every dollar you make shows up immediately. It's taxed before you can save it, invest it, or even fully enjoy it. But for someone whose wealth lives inside appreciating assets, time becomes an ally. The longer they wait, the larger their net worth grows, untouched. Of course, appreciation alone doesn't pay for daily life. You can't buy groceries with unrealized gains. And this is where the second move changes everything. Once you own substantial assets, banks begin to treat you very differently. Those assets become collateral, not something you have to sell, but something you can borrow against. Wealthy individuals don't cash out their investments. They leverage them. Modern financial institutions offer lending products specifically designed for this purpose. Securities-backed lines of credit allow clients to borrow millions while keeping their portfolios fully intact. From a tax perspective, this is the crucial pivot. Borrowed money is not considered income. When cash comes from a loan, the IRS doesn't see it as something to tax. It's simply debt. So when a wealthy individual borrows against their portfolio, that money flows into their account completely tax-free. It can be used to buy homes, fund lifestyles, invest in new ventures, or cover everyday expenses, all without creating a taxable event. What makes this system so powerful is the relationship between borrowing costs and asset growth. Wealthy borrowers typically receive favorable interest rates because their collateral is strong and diversified. Meanwhile, their assets continue to appreciate. If the portfolio grows faster than the cost of the loan, the gap becomes a quiet source of compounding advantage. Over time, this creates a loop that reinforces itself. As assets grow, borrowing capacity increases. Existing loans are refinanced. New credit becomes available. The individual lives off borrowed money while their actual wealth continues to expand in the background. To the outside world, it looks like spending. To the tax system, it looks like nothing at all. This is the point where the story starts to feel deeply unsettling. Because at no step so far has anything illegal happened. No rules have been broken. No loopholes have been exploited. The system isn't being cheated. It's being used exactly the way it was built, by people who understand that the goal is not to earn more, but to never need to realize what they already own. That self-reinforcing loop raises an obvious, almost desperate question. If wealth is never sold and debt keeps piling up, where does this all actually end? For most people, debt feels like something that eventually has to be paid in full, with consequences if it isn't. But in the buy, borrow, die system, the endgame is not repayment through work or liquidation. The endgame is death, and that's not meant to be dark or dramatic. It's a legal mechanism. When someone who holds appreciating assets dies, the tax system does something most people never learn about until it's too late to matter. It resets history. Under current U.S. law, inherited assets receive what's called a stepped-up basis. That means the value of the asset is recalculated at the moment of death. Not at what it was originally purchased for. Not at what it was worth 10 or 20 years ago. At its current market value. Every dollar of appreciation that occurred during the person's lifetime, sometimes over multiple decades, simply disappears for tax purposes. It's as if it never happened. This is the moment where the entire strategy clicks into place. The gains that were never taxed because they were never realized don't suddenly become taxable when someone dies. They are erased. And because of that reset, heirs can sell inherited assets immediately without owing capital gains tax on decades of growth. To understand how powerful this is, it helps to stop thinking in theory and walk through a real-world style example. Imagine someone named Maria. Maria spends years building and selling businesses and eventually accumulates $1 million. She could spend it, upgrade her lifestyle, and slowly watch it shrink as taxes and expenses eat away at it. Instead, she does what the system quietly rewards. She invests that money into assets chosen for appreciation, not income. Over time, those assets grow. At a conservative rate, her portfolio doubles to nearly $2 million in about a decade. None of that growth is taxed, because nothing is sold. If Maria were to cash out at that point, she would owe hundreds of thousands in capital gains taxes. So she doesn't. She walks into a bank and borrows against her portfolio instead. Because her assets are strong collateral, she's offered generous terms. The money she borrows is not income. It's not taxed. It's simply debt. She uses that borrowed money to live, to buy property, to invest in new opportunities, to enjoy life. Meanwhile, her underlying portfolio continues to grow. Year after year, the math works quietly in her favor. Her assets compound, her borrowing capacity increases, loans are refinanced, new credit becomes available. On paper, her net worth keeps climbing, even as she spends freely. Decades later, Maria passes away. At that point, her portfolio has grown to $8 million. She has outstanding loans, but her assets are worth far more than her debt. Her heirs inherit the portfolio at its current market value, not the original $1 million. They sell a portion of the assets to pay off the loans. They owe zero capital gains tax. The remaining millions become their inheritance, clean, intact, and ready to continue the same cycle. This is not a clever trick. It's not an exploit hiding in fine print. It's a foundational feature of the tax code, one that overwhelmingly favors ownership over labor and inheritance over income. Maria didn't need to cheat. She didn't need to hide money. She didn't need to outsmart the system. She simply understood the rules and let time, compounding, and the law do the rest. What makes Maria's story unsettling isn't just that it worked, it's that it scales. The larger the fortune, the smoother and more powerful this system becomes. Bigger portfolios unlock better loan terms, lower interest rates, higher leverage, more flexibility. Wealth doesn't just grow faster at the top, it becomes easier to live on without ever touching it. This is how fortunes stop behaving like money and start behaving like infrastructure. A family with $10 million can already live beyond what most people will ever experience, while paying very little in taxes. A family with $100 million can do the same at a scale that feels almost abstract. And because each generation inherits assets at a reset value, the cycle doesn't weaken over time, it strengthens. This is why conversations about tax policy so often feel disconnected from reality. Political debates obsess over tax rates, brackets, and percentages, while quietly ignoring the core issue. You can raise capital gains taxes dramatically, and it won't matter to people who never sell. You can argue about fairness in income taxation, while the largest concentrations of wealth generate no income at all. The system doesn't fail to tax the rich by accident. It fails because it was never designed to tax wealth that stays invested, borrowed against, and passed down. There are consequences beyond inequality. When massive amounts of assets are never sold, supply tightens, prices rise, markets behave differently. Wealth becomes less liquid for everyone except those who already have the most access. What looks like personal financial success at the top quietly reshapes the economy underneath it. Understanding this doesn't mean rejecting personal responsibility or giving up on financial progress. It means separating guilt from reality. Many people feel behind not because they made reckless choices, but because they were taught to play a game that punishes effort and rewards ownership. The most dangerous myth isn't that money is evil or that success is rigged. It's the idea that everyone is judged by the same rules. Once that myth dissolves, something important changes. You stop blaming yourself for outcomes that were structurally unlikely. You stop chasing advice that was never meant for you. And you start asking better questions, not just about how to earn more, but about how the system actually works. That awareness doesn't fix the game, but it finally lets you see the board. When you step back and look at everything we've walked through, one uncomfortable truth becomes clear. The biggest divide in modern society isn't intelligence, discipline, or effort. It's access to a system that rewards ownership while quietly penalizing labor. Buy, borrow, die isn't just a financial strategy. It's a lens, a way of seeing how wealth moves, how power compounds, and why so many people can do everything right and still feel like they're falling behind. The system doesn't respond to how hard you work. It responds to how your money is structured, and for most people, that structure was never explained honestly. The lesson here isn't to become cynical or resentful. It's to become clear-eyed. You may never be able to use buy, borrow, die at scale, but understanding it can still change how you live. It can push you to value ownership over appearances, patience over constant upgrades, and long-term stability over short-term validation. It can also help you stop blaming yourself for outcomes that were never purely personal to begin with. In real life, this might mean focusing less on lifestyle inflation and more on building assets you can actually hold on to. It might mean questioning advice that treats income as the ultimate goal, instead of a tool. And most importantly, it means making decisions with awareness, not illusions. Before we end, I'd love to hear your perspective. Do you think the tax system should prioritize taxing income, or should it focus more on taxing accumulated wealth? Please share your thoughts politely in the comments so everyone can read different viewpoints. If this video helped you see the system more clearly, consider subscribing to Quietly Broke. Your support is what allows this channel to keep making honest, thoughtful content like this.